What about grammar? Should I study it or should I ignore it? I'm being told both things. I'm Joseph, this is Input English. Let's take a deeper dive into how we acquire grammar. How can we use good grammar and how can we be good students of the English language as adults? I have 5 points to share with you and I will try to wrap it up into a nice perspective so that you can move forward with confidence. Now, this topic actually came right out of the comments section. The comments section is one of my favorite aspects of this channel because it puts me in contact with you, the people who are consuming this content. And what I have learned is that the people who watch this channel tend to be very thoughtful and very sophisticated. I've come to know that viewers on this channel are learning their second or more likely third or fourth language. So the comments that I get in the comment section are very sophisticated and very thoughtful. So the other day, I very succinctly argued against studying grammar and vocabulary because that doesn't work very well. That was perhaps too concise, and so in a comment, it was pointed out that I had demonized studying grammar. And it was super useful that that was pointed out because I don't want to demonize anything or anybody. That is not my approach. The comment section keeps me happy and it keeps me honest. So I thought this would be a great time to go through a logical approach to grammar. We are adults acquiring English, and grammar is part of what we need to learn. With this channel, I am trying to create a different vibe. We are trying to learn, but clearly this is not a school and we are not school children. We are adults. This is not a top-down approach where the teacher is standing on high and telling the students what they need to do, must do, have to do. In creating this channel, I had no intention that I would create myself as an authority figure. I would prefer to be a resource. I would prefer to be someone who is willing to help. But I chafe at the idea of being an authority figure. So as we dive into this, let's pose a couple of questions. Should we explicitly study grammar? In other words, should we buy a grammar book and set upon it in a didactic study of the subject of grammar? Should we study it online by looking for grammar resources, looking for videos about grammar rules? And I would submit that the key word that helps you navigate those questions is curiosity. One of our most powerful tools. So let's get started on our 5 points of how we might approach grammar as part of our goal of acquiring English. Number 1, I would start with and stay with lots of input. Comprehensible input is here to stay. It is arguably the best way to learn English. English is not a simple little language. It's a mess. English derives from Latin, Anglo-Saxon, Old Norse, French, and a bunch of other sources because we love to import phrases from other languages. English has incredibly complex grammar. The pronunciations are completely unpredictable compared to the spelling. And as I've said in other videos, it's a mess. It's a beautiful mess, but it's a mess. Now, if you wanted to learn a language that was logical, with predictable, consistent pronunciations, I would direct your attention to Spanish, Italian, and several others, which are languages that are very logical, and the grammar is, to my eye, much more straightforward to understand than that of English. Bear in mind that native English speakers become fluent in their language and use good grammar long before they study grammar in school. So knowing all of that, I would stay with lots of input and probably more input than you expect you need. I think it's a terrible disservice to have someone on a video tell you you need X number of hours of input when that estimate is not tailored to the type of input, how closely you're paying attention, etc. There are a lot of variables that would make a numerical estimate of the input you need completely invalid. That's why I just say thousands of hours. I'm being vague on purpose. Do you need 1,500? Maybe. Or maybe you need 6,000. You find out along the way, as you're learning, how much input you need. Number 2, as I've said in other videos, you need to notice things. When you're listening to input and you're watching videos and you're reading, you're going to see things. And all I want people to do is notice them. Doesn't mean you have to look everything up immediately. It doesn't mean that you have to bring your input session to a complete halt. Just notice things, because there will be opportunities to explore going forward. You have to notice things. Number 3, use your innate curiosity as an asset. When you see something that puzzles you, that interests you, that gets you a little bit obsessed, use that curiosity to explore a little bit. Now you have to use judgment. If there's a simple little phrase and you spend 5 hours exploring it, that's not very efficient. But if you have a simple little phrase and you have an idea of what it might mean and you want to know a little bit more, a quick investigation of that phrase might be very helpful to you going forward. Number 4, investigate grammar efficiently. The point I would make here is that studying grammar explicitly is not toxic. It doesn't harm you. What it does is gobble up your time. It doesn't give you much input while you're investigating things. So because of that, I don't own a lot of grammar books. I don't go through and study grammar explicitly because I find that very inefficient. But if I see a phrase or an expression that's interesting and I'm curious about the grammar, I will use an online tool to look into that very briefly. And once I get a clear picture of what it means, then I'm going to close that out and go back to getting more input, because this will not be the last time I see that expression, phrase, or word. The next time I see that expression, I will be likely to say, oh yes, I remember that. And we'd like to have a lot of those, oh yes, I remember that, even if we have to go back and refresh our understanding of it with another quick little look online to see precisely what it means. With the development of AI tools for online use, this is becoming more and more efficient, but with current AI, I'm always a little skeptical as to whether the AI understood my question and gave me a correct answer. you can get a lot of nonsense from AI. And number 5, we need a perspective on grammar. We need to understand that grammar is integral to the use of the language. We need to speak with good grammar. We need to understand that most of the grammar we need will be acquired through comprehensible input without explicit study. We need to understand that some people love studying grammar. They're incredibly curious about grammar, and they want to put their valuable time into the explicit study of grammar so that they know it very thoroughly. This is not evil. This is not wrong. This is a human characteristic that should be celebrated when it is recognized. We need to understand that for the most part, native speakers don't study grammar rules until they have been fluent for many years. Little children are not schooled in grammar. They acquire the language by comprehensible input, and their study of grammar is when they're in school, later in grade school or even in secondary school. In a previous video, I pointed out that comprehensible input is about 50 years old. The first paper published by Stephen Krashen that used the term input hypothesis was published in 1977, and you could argue that the work that he did to produce that paper took a couple of years. So it's perfectly reasonable for someone to say comprehensible input is about 50 years old. It's not a new concept in the 21st century by any means. But I think I need to point out that comprehensible input is not 50 years old. It's thousands of years old, because basically every language learned on the earth over the past several thousand years was learned by comprehensible input. This is nothing new, and this is useful to understand to help us with a perspective on how we're going to acquire this language. I studied a lot of grammar in high school in German class, and I did not acquire German. I did not learn to understand and speak some German until I was introduced to comprehensible input. Not in name, because we didn't know the name of it at the time, but we were doing language exchange, and I got a boatload of input, and that's when I made real progress. We get a lot of advice on how to learn languages as adults, and many times I have been told, forget about studying grammar. But I have to admit that over the years I have studied grammar when curiosity forced me to take a deeper dive and understand a particular point more thoroughly. And I think I'm better for that. I invite comments below, and if you like videos like this, be sure to click on this one next. See you soon.